All right, let's do a couple of reader emails because last time we failed in that respect. Before we wrap up here, or at least one. I say a couple, but then, who knows what'll happen. So, Josh writes in, and he has a comic book oriented question here. Hey guys, with Marvel and DC expanding their franchises to the small screen, wouldn't now be a great time for Fox to make a similar move? X-Force is essentially dead in the water right now as far as the movie is concerned, and the mutant universe has so much to offer for smaller characters or even beloved characters who didn't get their just due, i.e. Angel. Now that Days of Future Past has essentially reset the mutant world, wouldn't it make sense for them to take advantage of that and bring something like X-Force or New Mutants to television? Thanks guys, love the show. He has another comment that we'll see if we get to in a little bit. So yeah, here's his big question. Why not? Why wouldn't Fox want to expand the already successful X-Men mutant movie franchise into TV?
We were talking about this, Josh,
yes,
just a little while ago. And I think they would. My question, and I don't actually know the answer to this, is who has the rights for certain things? Like, does Marvel have the rights for an animated series, which would make a lot of sense, we were saying?
Yeah, because Wolverine has been popping up pretty consistently on, like, guest spot roles on Ultimate Spider-Man and whatnot.
Yeah.
So it seems like Marvel can use the X-Men characters in animation, television animation,
but not in live action.
We think.
We think. And so if that is the case, that Marvel is the one with the rights to use them in animation, then probably, and you were speculating about this, Eric, as well, they wouldn't want to draw attention to a franchise that they can't benefit from in a live action film.
Which is why again, this is speculation, but it's very curious that there hasn't been a new just straight up X-Men or even just Wolverine animated series in several years, considering how popular they are still as a comic book and then the movies.
It's like, to me, it does make perfect sense. Mm-hmm. And so if there is, so it's got to be some kind of, like, if Marvel does have the rights, they again are like, well, everything they're doing is about synergy.
Right.
Like combining their universes, drawing people to their movies, their shows, every character that they own in every way.
Right, like they did an event when they did the new Avengers animated series last year. It was the exact lineup of the movie, plus the Falcon, who was going to be introduced in the next Captain America movie. You know, it was all like, we want this to sync up.
Synergy. So they're not going to do an X-Men cartoon that's going to become incredibly popular and then have little kids going like, I'd like to check out the X-Men movies too.
Right.
When it's like, well, then you're giving Fox those dollars.
Right.
Live action wise, Simon Kinberg has hinted at a live action TV.
I mean, it was just. I mean, look, he did so many interviews for Days of Future Past, especially because Singer wasn't doing press, so Kinberg kind of took it over on the creative side, and he did infer that that
we should say who Simon Kinberg is.
Simon Kinberg, is a screenwriter and producer who currently seems to be doing everything, but he wrote Days of Future Past and was a producer on it. He is again returning to co-write X-Men Apocalypse. While, by the way, he's also one of the main guys involved in the new Star Wars stuff, producing Star Wars Rebels, writing one of the new Star Wars movies, and he's also developing the Fox Fantastic Four stuff, and we're not sure exactly how he's doing 10 million things, but he's doing it all.
But if he was hinting around at a live action TV series,
then at least there's been conversations that he said,
yeah, and so we would assume that he knows that Fox has the rights to do live action versions, even if it's on television. Now, assuming can make an A out of you and me, so we don't know that to be true.
We don't know that, but let us go down that rabbit hole of assumption. I would say, Josh, that yes. Especially, again, we're living in this post-Avengers world, and everyone's trying to build out what they have and turn some things where they really shouldn't and some things where they should into bigger franchises.
Yeah.
And look, X-Men makes a lot of sense. Unlike, we've had conversations at IGN about how it's going to be a bigger struggle for Sony to try to take Spider-Man and franchise that beyond Spider-Man. But X-Men is a lot because it's so big, and what Fox has the movie rights to is crazy because it has all the spin-offs and all these characters that have had their own comic books and spin-offs and different teams. There's a lot that they could do there. So yeah, I would think that they've at least had the conversation about, hey, what if we did a TV show with some of the smaller scale characters, lower budget thing than the movies. I would think that inevitably they will try to develop that, and in the next year or two, especially now that they're ramping up. Like, look, X-Men Apocalypse is going to happen. Is already being in some ways made. It's being written right now to be out in 2 years. I think they will try to get a TV show off the ground.
And it's crazy because there's multiple like characters that you could tap into for a TV show and realities potentially.
Yeah.
Which is sort of interesting too. You could do a series that takes place in that post-apocalyptic world.
Right.
And take some of those actors that are not huge.
Yeah.
And have a show built around them.
I mean, look, or even Days of Future Past, the fact
guys, man.
Yeah, I mean, and Days of Future Past introduced all these other new characters in that future world. And, like a lot of people, myself included, really responded to Blink, right? What if you did something with Blink, and some of these other
expensive.
characters?
I mean, well, okay.
There's always going to be the limitations of, the powers and what can I do on TV, which is going to come into it, too, because people will then call you out if it doesn't look as good as the movies.
Which it can't look as good as the movies, which is why an animated version would be the ideal version, but we speculate that they don't have the rights to do that.
Right. That Fox doesn't have the rights.
Fox does not have the rights to do that.
And that Marvel won't because Fox does. It's so complicated. We were saying earlier, too, it must be really complicated trying to explain to a little kid why? Yeah. If like a little kid picks up the Avengers comic and is like, hey, Wolverine and Spider-Man are teaming up with Captain America and Iron Man. Why haven't they done that in the movie?
And then a parent being like, well, sometimes when one franchise can't get along.
When a comic book company takes their characters.
The rights with these characters are really complicated, yes. And who can do what, where, when, and how, and why. But basically, Fox has mutants for movies.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, and I will go back. I'll bring up a very old school thing, but the reason
except for the loophole of Scarlet Witch.
Yeah, it's so strange. But bringing up the fact that I do believe, unless things have changed, that it would also affect Marvel not being able to use those characters in live action TV. Going back to like the year 2000, over in the show happened. If anyone remembers the show Mutant X, that syndicated show that Marvel was licensing out. And the thing about Mutant X is, even though it took a title of a Marvel comic, it was like brand new characters. But there was a lawsuit from Fox to Marvel, basically saying you are trying to get around the fact that we have all the rights to X-Men by doing a show that could easily be construed as a spinoff of X-Men.
Yeah.
And there was I think they had a settlement over that. So the fact that happened that many years ago makes me think that would still be the case now, and that Fox, if there was ever an X-Men related TV show, it would be Fox in charge of it. But yes, I mean, this is our long answer to saying that I'm sure, besides what Kim Burke said, I just can't believe that Fox right now isn't being like,
I have to think that in some darkened corners, or probably just in brightly lit conference rooms, those discussions are happening. So maybe we will see X-Men on TV in the next couple of years.
It's very possible. I'm going to wrap up there. We only did one reader email, but now we have to go into a meeting. So,
do we? We do.
Yes. It's only one reader email this week, but that's one more than we did last week. But please send your emails to channelsurfing@ign.com. You can be the next Josh. Get your email, but I do promise we'll try to get some more in next time. I always promise things, but then I don't deliver.
But then you don't deliver.
I did one. We did one. Anyway, follow Roth Cornett on Twitter, Eric IGN on Twitter, like us on Facebook. You know the drill, and Shockma.
Shockma.